So, hi everyone. It's wonderful to see you and wonderful to see you at home as well. So, our monthly theme is ancestral wisdom and new thought, and how all of the wonderful wisdom that really has served us well in all of the times that humanity has been on this earth, that there is so much wonderful golden nuggets in all of that. And that new thought basically is looking at all of that and how can we make that relevant. And so this month we're looking at that from different viewpoints. So we looked at what? Do you remember what it was last week? Strawberries, wild strawberries, and how they give themselves fully. And so this week we're looking at cause and effect and using the idea of Sweetgrass, and Marcia read the excerpt from the book on how things need to be tended in a certain way if we want life to show up a certain way. So here's a question for you. How can I deepen intentional creation through me to include the well-being of all life? It's a trick question. Anybody have an answer? So the whole idea is that when you are intentionally creating your life, you're actually affecting the whole world. You are already. If you think that who you are is insignificant and what you do and how you tend to your life and your friendships and all of that in your life, that somehow you're an island unto yourself, you're wrong, because you really do affect everything around you. So this is a quote from the book. If we use a plant respectfully, it will stay and flourish. If we ignore it, it will go away. I'd like you to think about some of the things that maybe you were surprised it went away until you really thought about it, and it was because you were neglecting it in some way that it went away, or you weren't appreciating it, or you didn't like it anymore. So the core idea today is you're not separate from life, that you're participating in it. What you think, feel, and give attention to shapes what grows. And one of the first statements I ever learned in Unity was, what you focus on grows. And thoughts are things, and words have wings. And that's what that means. So I'd like to look at your inner world and mine, our relationships, and also the good of all, and how does this concept help everybody? Because I know that it's a grand spiritual idea, this idea that we're going to make the world a better place and all of that. But the better place needs to be right where you are first. That's the only place it can begin. Now, you can prime your own pump. And what I mean by that is you can offer all of that to others, and it'll eventually rub off on you, and you can do both. You can work on yourself and others, even if you don't quite believe that it's going to work. So I'd like to go a little deeper into that. So your inner world is the cause of your outer world. You've heard that said. Few of you are nodding. That concept is a little nebulous, isn't it? Cloud-like, hard to kind of hang on to. How can it be that what I'm thinking affects the world, because it seems as though there is so much stuff going on in the world, right? So let's go a little deeper. So Unity teaches the law of mind. You've heard of that. Your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs impress upon the creative field of life and are reflected back as experience. You know, if you're having a bad day, how it just seems to get worse. Or if you're having a really good day, how it just seems to be even better and better. And that's just a very small example. So you're not merely reacting to circumstances, you're participating in their formation. And that's not what we're taught normally. You know, we react, don't we? But we forget to remember that somehow it wouldn't be in your life if you hadn't drawn it to you, or the awareness of it to you, whatever that means. And I'm not saying that we're victims of our thinking or any of that. It's not that. It's that if you can move forward with optimism and trust, then no matter what happens, that optimism and trust doesn't have to be destroyed. It can continue. And sometimes it takes a little longer for the results to show up because you've been in such a negative environment or a negative state, but keep on going. Because what is there to trust is the idea that who I am being is eventually going to show up. I just need to be determined. So are you ready to be determined? So relationships, this is some examples for you. So you notice someone in your life pulling away. And if you assume rejection and respond with defensiveness or withdrawal, the distance usually grows. But if you choose curiosity, compassion, or honest communication, the relationship often softens and reconnects. Your response doesn't just react to the situation, it helps to shape what happens next. And I know that when I have been in a kinder mindset or a more receptive, open mindset, that I can say, gee, this is not normal for them to behave this way. I wonder what's going on. How can I support them rather than increase the negative friction that's going on? So let's say a work or creative project. Here's another example. If you're feeling overwhelmed and doubtful, you keep telling yourself, this is too hard, or I'll probably fail, or I might as well just give up. You're right, and the outcome reflects that. And if you approach it with, I'll take this one step at a time. I'm open to learning as I go. You create different results. And those are just simple little phrases, but it's a mindset. It's a consciousness. So your mindset becomes part of the outcome. Does that make sense? And I know that I'm telling you things that you know and you've already studied or learned or read, but for some reason, it doesn't always land in the middle of a chaos, does it? And to remember it during those times. So here's an example of a personal challenge. So you face a setback. Maybe it's an unexpected bill or a health issue or a disappointing result. Relaxing into the truth opens new possibilities. In other words, how you respond shapes what happens next. You're not just responding to what happened, you're influencing how it's going to unfold. So, a personal example for me, I had abdominal pain for like 5 years, sometimes so debilitating. I couldn't get out of bed for 8 hours. And I kept praying that something would show up. Well, it ended up being that I had to have surgery to resolve the problem, but it wasn't easily diagnosed. And so for many years, I had all this trouble. And when I had to have the surgery, which was an emergency surgery, I could have looked at that and said, boy, this is a real setback that, I have to have this surgery. But it was the only way that this situation in my life could be resolved, was I had to have that surgery to solve it. And so I looked at it as, thank you, God, finally, there's a resolution. So see, even that negative thing that took a while to get to and to recover from seemed horrible. And you might even tell people how horrible my life was because this happened. But if you can take a viewpoint that says, somehow I'm being supported in this, there's something good in this, it does show up. And it'll show up quicker if you're in that mindset. So always, in all ways, your thoughts, your emotional tone, and the choices don't just follow circumstances. They contribute to what grows next. So if you've got something going on, what's your mindset? Is it like, is the other shoe going to drop tomorrow? What's going to show up? Oh my God, is there going to be more bills? Is this another relationship that's going to tank within 2 months? Or is my health just going to get worse and worse and worse? Or you didn't sleep well. Looks like I'm never going to sleep really well again. And then guess what you set up? You set up circumstances that say yes to who you're being. So the law of attraction says like attracts like. So what you consistently focus on, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, sets the tone for what you draw into your life. Would you say that you agree with that? And in what I've told you up to this point, can you see the parallels in your own life? So here's a reflection. Where is your attention in the different areas of your life? Is it on possibility or is it on limitation? Is it on trust or fear? Is it on appreciation or resistance? And are you so well on your journey of spirituality that you can say, I appreciate this, whatever it is that happened, because there's something good coming. And I hope that you are. So let's look at relationship. Relationship creates growth. And the Sweetgrass teaching, which Marcia read for us today, does not thrive when it's ignored. It flourishes when it's respectfully harvested. When there is relationship, gratitude, and conscious participation, life responds to engagement. So what needs some conscious attention in your life? Some good, positive, conscious attention. And maybe it's pruning, because that's what it needs. Only you know. And as you open up to that possibility, the answers are going to come to you. So I have a cute story about hydrangeas and our dog Shadow. So I had a little house that I had purchased, and I was hoping that my hydrangea would eventually look like the one that's in the picture. But when I bought it, of course, you know how they are, 2-3 branches, maybe about 2 feet tall, and looking very frail looking. And I planted it in the center of the lawn in the front yard. And Shadow, a 130-pound German Shepherd, decided to eat the upper leaves of it one day while he was out there. And I hadn't noticed it. And when I saw it, I'm like, Randy and I were fairly new in our relationship, and I didn't really know much about dogs and all of that. And I just gave both of them what for, because my poor hydrangea was now destroyed. Well, you know that the next spring when it came up, it looked almost like this. And it was because Shadow had pruned it. So what I'm saying to you is that sometimes what seems like a disaster, if you can just trust, it's going to be okay, if not even better. So, I said, thank you, Shadow, sorry. So any experience that shows you what you don't want isn't punishment. It's helping you clarify what you do want and move into better alignment with it. Think of it as feedback. So have you got something giving you feedback? And what might that be? So when your energy is withheld, ignored, or met with resistance, lack of progress can occur. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty good at burying my head in the sand if I don't want to look at it. How about you? Or do something to distract yourself. Just to ignore it. The thing is that it doesn't go away. It usually gets louder or bigger. Or when it does finally go poof, it's like, gee, if I'd handled this before, would have been better. So that's the lack of progress, and also the reminder that, okay, so how am I dealing with these things? What am I ignoring just because we go, well, tomorrow's another day. Next week's, I'll start Monday. I'll call them next week instead of now. So have you ever tried to hold fear or doubt? Some of us have held fear and doubt about some things our whole lives. Or have you tried to avoid or judge or push against what's happening? The news sure gives us lots of fodder for that. Or have you withheld care or effort because you figure, well, what's the point? The thing is that you are the recipient of all of that first. So energy is how you show up. We say God is energy, but God is even more than energy. God is the possibility of even more energy. So what energy are you showing up with? And what areas could use maybe a little different kind of energy? Your focus, your attitude, and emotional tone shape whether something grows, changes, or stays stuck. You know, they have those gauges that can tell what the frequency of a plant is, for instance. And they did those experiments where if you swore at the plant and you told it terrible things and whatever, the plant literally shivered and then shriveled, or it grew and was just amazing depending on what you said to it. And you could actually measure the amount of vibration. That's the kind of impact you have on your life and the people in your life and the circumstances in your life and even the things that you're doing. So it's a wonderful time to start thanking everything, even if it's just feedback of, oh, I've forgotten and I went on a different tangent than I should have. So when you show up with intention, with appreciation and care, life responds with expansion, with possibility. Because one is a glass ceiling, the other is no ceiling. So here's an example of energy imbalance. You consistently invest time and care into your work or creative projects. So you're really, really busy about that. And yet in your relationships, you may assume, oh, it's fine. They'll have time for me when I'm ready, and forget to be grateful about them and what you have there. You're nurturing growth in one area while unintentionally withholding attention in another. So is there an imbalance somewhere in your life? Could you maybe dedicate a little more in other places? Just a question. So where are you actively nurturing growth in your life? I mean, it's a silly game I play with Randy, and I've shared this with you before. In the middle of something where we haven't talked for maybe an hour because we're watching television or something, I'll go, hey, Randy, I love you. And he looks at me and laughs and says, I love you too. Before he used to just shake his head. Now he at least says, I love you too. Not that I'm expecting that, but it's that recognizing that the two of us could actually, on a day that we're off and we're at home, we could spend the entire day not communicating because you just think everything's fine. But I think to stop and be a deliberate creator in your life, you need to pay attention all of the time to everything that's going on and everyone that's in it. So you're not creating in isolation. I told you that before, that your vibration affects even the plants around you. And every intention, choice, and attitude contributes to what we call the collective field. So align your personal good with the good of all. Alignment with source feels like ease and flow and clarity. So if your life isn't easy, and I don't mean challenging, because challenging can sometimes be something that, you embrace. You want that. But feeling like you're in the flow, like you're not going backwards, but that you're at least moving forward, or that you have clarity. Because when you're aligned, you affect everyone around you. You affect the world. And so when we get all of this news that's going on right now in the world, there is just a real huge misalignment. And the more that we each buy into that negative stuff that's going on, we're aligning with that. And guess what we get? We get more of that. And so each of us is responsible, first of all, for personally aligning, and then it affects the whole. Does that make sense? So Sweetgrass teaches reciprocity. When you participate with respect, life flourishes, not just for you, but for the ecosystem you belong to. I watched a mini short on YouTube of a shaman who said that people when they are getting older, have a tendency to get more and more comfortable in their space. And that eventually they get to the place where they don't even leave home very often. And that what that actually does is your world keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Your desires to experience anything get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then it becomes almost impossible to move out of that. And that if you can just Give your routine a bit of a kick in the pants and do something every day to get out of that routine. Go outside, even if it's to stand on your front steps and go, oh, look at all this snow. I think I'll go back in and have a nap instead of digging myself out. But at least you went out, you got dressed, you did something different. And I'm just using that as an example because we've had a lot of snow lately, but this may not be very timely if you're watching this in the summertime. But the thing is that, are you set in your ways to such a degree that everything seems like an effort? And if you aren't, yahoo, good. But if you are in some ways, how can you break out of that? Because as you do, you have more vitality, more appreciation, and more possibility for all kinds of things. So your practice for this week, before acting, ask, does this choice serve life? And that may be a big question. So you could say, does this choice serve my life? Or maybe it's when you're buying groceries and you buy organic instead because you feel that it serves life. So does this choice contribute to flourishing? So you choosing to be insular, is that contributing to flourishing? No, it isn't. So here's an affirmation for you. I'm creating a world that works for every living thing. Want to say that with me? I'm creating a world that works for every living thing. So here's your recap. So you regularly check in, listen, and express appreciation with one person in your life. With another, maybe you assume that they know I care. So you stop saying thank you and asking how they're doing. In one, you're assuming that that relationship is just going to be there because they are so good at kind of hanging on to you, even if you don't hang on to them. But what I'm here to remind you is that those will go away naturally, and there won't be that same connection if you don't constantly nourish it and feed it. So how about you make time for walking, stretching, or rest because you value your health. But when stress shows up, you ignore your body's signals and push through. Anybody do that? Care strengthens what matters. Neglect lets stress build. So the burying the head in the sand, being a really good ostrich, for the moment is kind of something you can say, yay, I was a good ostrich today and buried my head in the sand. But in the long run, it doesn't serve you. So you take small steps towards something you believe in, like writing, creating, or learning. Yet another goal feels too unlikely, so you stop thinking about it altogether. Have you given up on something and you're just doing the easy stuff? Or you think that that idea, that dream is just way beyond anything that you could possibly do? You get to choose. Belief fuels progress. Doubt reduces possibility. I had an opportunity to think about Jean, who was a member for so many years. She passed away when she was 96. I thought, if I was living Jean's life, I would have another 28 years to live. 28 years, and I've been behaving like an old lady occasionally. Even in my thinking, I have. And so I said, well, what would someone who's going to live another 28 years or more, what's she going to do? So I asked myself, what are you going to do? So all of a sudden I started having conversations with Randy about that. And he said, well, your designs, my artwork, would look really nice in something like a kimono that someone could buy as a gift for someone else. And so then I started following the prompts of that. And I found a company in Montreal that will print my designs onto fabric and make garments. And then the idea went, and this is that expansion thing. Well, you have done the one of a kind show 4 times, 5 times. And each time had really great results. And it was only a 5-day effort a couple of times a year. I could go into the one-of-a-kind show, I thought, with all these beautiful garments and my art and all of this stuff. And like the idea got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then my reality set in and said, hey, you're 68. You can't stand for more than 5 minutes. And how are you going to sit in a booth for 11 hours a day for 5 days and talk your head off? And I could have sat back and said, yeah, you're right. I'll go back into my cocoon. But it was such a big idea that I haven't given up on it. It's not until Christmas time anyways. So I have time to change some of those realities that are stopping me from doing that. If I do, I'll be there and I'll be thriving. If I don't, it was an idea that whose dream I let go. But that's an example for you to think about. Where have you boxed yourself in? And if you have, how might you open yourself up to the possibility of something? And then don't shut it down right away with all of but this is the reality right now. And say, no, in spirit, anything is possible. So the bottom line is, what you give attention, gratitude, and belief to tends to grow. What you stop showing up for slowly disappears. So, this idea of this one-of-a-kind show and all of that. So one of my greatest inspirations for creating garments in my adult life was a woman I worked with. And she's about 10 years my senior, so she'd be 78 now. And she would see things that I had created because we worked in the same business, in the beauty business. And she was a bigger woman like me. And she said, I love your things. Would you make me something? And I said, I don't like doing commission work because that boxes me in. I'm too much of an artist. I need to just make what I make out of the sheer joy of making it. And if you like it, you can have it. So I said, this is what I'll do. Every time I make something new for myself, I'll show you. And if you want it, I'll sell it to you. Well, that started me on this journey of a relationship with her. And she probably bought, I don't know, 40, 50 garments, coats, things over the 10 years that I knew her. And so as I'm thinking of this one-of-a-kind show, and we're two old girls now, right? 68 and 78. I called her, and I hadn't talked to her for a couple of years. And we chatted for a while. And then I said to her, because she loves trade shows and she's lost a lot of weight and she's a lot more fit than I am. And I said, would you be interested in working with me if I decide to do this booth thing at the one-of-a-kind? She said, absolutely. When are we going? And I thought, when you open up to whatever it is that shows up that seems like it's way too big or too good to be true, there is all kinds of people and ideas and resources and things that will show up for you. But it won't if you don't open to it first. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I may just decide that this was a really fun exercise and I won't do it, but that's okay. What did I learn in the process? I learned that I had put myself in a box. I didn't think I was. I thought I was kind of pretty expansive. But when I embrace this idea of perhaps another 28 years, what do I want that to look like? That is going to guide my days. So we looked at your inner world and who your being shows up in your life. We looked at the relationship you have with things needs to be tended to if you want to continue to have a good relationship. And when you are being good for yourself, you're being good for everyone.